Okay, let's just address the elephant in the room right away. Those prompt engineering skills you've spent, the last 2 years absolutely perfecting? Yeah, they might actually be the exact thing holding your AI agents back right now. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, massive shift in how we build and interact with artificial intelligence. We're talking about moving away from that single prompt obsession you probably know very well and zooming out into something way more comprehensive. I mean, be honest. Have you ever written just a totally perfect prompt, you hit enter, and then you just watch it completely fail? It's incredibly frustrating, right? And honestly, we've all been there. For the last couple of years, we've basically been obsessing over tweaking verbs and carefully curating our examples, just hunting for that literal magic phrase that unlocks better output. And hey, that obsession totally made sense when we were just sending one single message to a basic chatbot. We were trying to give the model exactly what it needed in one perfect shot. But as you know, the landscape of AI has evolved incredibly fast, and that single message approach, it's really starting to break down. Let's get into part 1, the prompting bottleneck. Moving beyond the single message. Because once you start building an actual AI agent, something that runs in a continuous loop, calls out to external tools, reads files, and actually has to remember its own past steps, well, a single prompt just isn't going to cut it. Suddenly, you have all these different elements competing for space inside your model's brain. You've got the ongoing conversation history, the raw data spitting back from tool outputs, entire retrieved documents, your baseline system instructions, and the memory of what happens 3 steps ago. All of this information, mashed together, makes up the model's context window. So if you're out here only tuning that first prompt while completely ignoring the absolute mountain of other data getting stuffed into that window, you're basically optimizing the smallest lever in the entire system. It's like trying to steer a massive cargo ship with a tiny wooden paddle. Which brings us to part 2, defining context engineering. This is the paradigm shift. We are fundamentally moving from a narrow mindset to a fully systemic one. Think about it. Prompt engineering asks a very focused question. What do I say to the model? It's entirely focused on your input. But context engineering, that asks a much broader, much more important question. What does the model actually know when I say it? You're no longer just a writer crafting a clever message. You have to be an architect designing a whole information environment. Let's clearly define what this means in practice. Context engineering is the discipline of deciding what information the model sees, in what form, and in what order at every single step of an agent's execution. This isn't just about that very first message you send to kick things off anymore. It's about meticulously managing the entire information pipeline across every single action the agent takes, ensuring it has exactly what it needs, precisely when it needs it, to actually succeed. So how do we do that? Let's look at part 3, the 3 pillars. These are the rules of the new paradigm. First up, we have dynamic pipelines. Because unlike a static prompt, your context window is alive and changing every single turn as the agent calls tools and gets results back. You are engineering a living, breathing pipeline of data here. The second pillar is curation, and this just means aggressively, and I mean aggressively, summarizing and filtering data before the model ever even sees it. And finally, the third pillar is structural formatting. The way information is formatted completely dictates how reliably the model can use it. Presenting your data in clearly labeled sections and structured JSON, that will consistently outperform loose, unstructured natural language, especially for anything an agent actually needs to parse or take action on. Actually, I want to pause on that curation piece for a second, because we really need to talk about context rot. Look, it is incredibly tempting to just give the model access to absolutely everything, right? But more context is emphatically not better context. Dumping an entire codebase or a massive unedited document into the window actively buries the actual signal the model needs, and it measurably hurts accuracy. It creates context rot. Good context engineering means you have to act like a strict bouncer at the door of the context window, only letting in the data that is hyper-relevant to the current step. Let's look at part 4, a customer support case study. We'll put this theory right into practice. So imagine we're building a customer support agent designed to answer questions using a company's internal documentation. If we look at how the exact same data is handled, the difference is just massive. Take document retrieval. The naive approach says, hey, let's grab the 10 most similar documents and just dump all of them, full text, right into the prompt, maximum info. But the context approach? That runs a cheap filtering step, scores them for actual relevance, keeps maybe the top 3, and compresses those down to just 2 or 3 sentences each. For chat history, the naive approach includes the entire log, filling the window with irrelevant small talk. The context approach just adds a short running summary. And finally, formatting. The naive approach sends one long, unstructured blob of text. The context approach meticulously organizes everything into clearly labeled sections, like source, user question, and conversation summary. And when you get this right, a massive shift happens. The model is no longer hunting for a needle in 10 massive haystacks. We have completely removed the noise. We've curated and structured the environment so the model can actually just do its job. And in practice, I promise you, this results in noticeably more accurate and way more consistent answers from your agent. All right, part 5, the unifying umbrella. Let's zoom out and look at the big picture here. Suddenly, things like memory systems, RAG pipelines, and tool formatting aren't separate, distinct topics anymore. They all fall firmly under the exact same umbrella. They are all, at their core, context engineering decisions. Every single time you make a call on what an agent should remember, what a tool should return, or what text gets summarized versus what gets dropped, you are doing context engineering. Whether you actually call it that or not, it is literally the core thread connecting all agent framework design. So as you go back to build your next autonomous system, you have to ask yourself a serious question. Will your agent stay reliable, or is it going to quietly fall apart at step 3? Because as these AI agents get more autonomous and they run for way longer periods without a human checking in, a clever little prompt just isn't going to save them. Managing the entire information environment across a whole session, that is the skill that actually determines your success now. So don't just optimize the message, optimize the context. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this fresh perspective transforms the way you build, and I will see you next time.